auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KeaversVoice.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
For my people that don't get to see me, trying to remind you who you are, just like in Romans 3. See, we about to blow across the world just like a day that's breezy. This motivation for the people and this classic Bible teaching say, make this for my people that don't get to see me, trying to remind you who you are, just like in Romans 3. See, we about to blow across the world just like a day that's breezy. This motivation for the people and this classic Bible teaching, hey, 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 motivation.
It was a monumental game for A&M and Tampa. It was a monumental game. Somebody had to lose, and thank God it was them this time.
We knew it was going to be a battle. Look at Jake Ave's record. 202 and 36, I think, some off-the-wall figures.
And nobody would play him because they didn't want to take a chance of getting beat. But the truth of it is,
over 46,000 tickets. Blacks were sitting in the east stands. The whites were sitting in the west stands. And the score wound up 34-28.
The only thing we proved that we wasn't inferior, that we were not inferior, and we were not afraid.
For one night, for 160 minutes, we was better than them.
For my people.
Hello and welcome to the BCSN SportsWrap. Brian Fulford here and A.D. Drew joined today. We got some special guests joining us for this episode of the BCSN SportsWrap. As you can see, if you're watching us on video, we've got our good friend of the program, Dr. Keynatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. And also, I think he might be making his debut on the BCSN SportsWrap, Trevin Jones of Urban Media Today, a good friend of the show. So I want to say to Doc, Trevin, Drew, how's everybody doing today?
I'm going to let my guest speak first.
Excited to be here, man. I've been watching you guys for the longest time. And I said, man, why doesn't Bryan and A.D. give me a shot? So finally, I'm getting my shot. And I get to do it with Doc. What's up, Six?
What's going on, Six? Yeah, they let me in the house. Let's get it going.
Well, us B5 Beers, gonna let y'all have y'all numerals over there. But welcome to the show. Introduce Trevin to our audience. They already know Dr. Cavil, so it's all one love, though, fellas.
Definitely.
It's greatly felt.
If you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, want to make sure you give our pages a like. Of course, if you're on Facebook, hopefully you're watching us on the Black College Sports Network or on the BCSN SportsWrap page. And if you're on YouTube, it's My JBN Online. That's where you can find this show. And, of course, our good friend Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. And that also streams on the Black College Sports Network as well on Twitter. I think that show airs live on Twitter, also on Facebook, but you can find it inside the HBCU Sports Lab is the link on Facebook. And Trevin, we'll do a plug later in the show, but give a plug on where we can find Urban Media Today and the shows that you do.
Oh, definitely. UrbanMediaToday.com. And every Saturday morning, we have a sports Saturday morning on UrbanMediaToday.com. We actually have a radio station on the website 24/7. Right at the top of the website, you just click on the blue button where the headphones are, like the headphones behind me. Click on that, puts you right on the radio station. It's music driven. But like I said, Saturday mornings, we have a podcast Saturday, and that's where you can catch Urban Media Today Talk Sports. We had Coach Larry Scott Jr. from Howard on last weekend. We're trying to be like you guys. So I'll put it out there like that.
Well, I saw that interview, and that was a great interview that you guys had there.
I appreciate it.
Really interesting, especially discussing what our first topic is going to be. You know, what are they going to do now? They got a man with a brand new program, new head coach, new staff, and he's all dressed up, and he has nowhere to go.
Well, you know what? I disagree. He has nowhere to go. Like, he has so much in front of him right now. Like Coach Scott said, if you get a chance, check out the show. They're prepared, and I like the way that he was going at it, talking about involving family, making sure that he had the players together as a family, and making sure that they have that support system. And he also stressed the importance of the player's safety first, which I was just like greatly impressed with. I'm impressed with him as a head coach.
Yeah, so that is a great lead into the first topic. One of the things that we wanted to get into since we last got together, I believe it's just AD and I with Doc, we were just coming off of the announcement from the CIAA and the SIAC, their joint statements that they were suspending their fall seasons. And then we had later in the week, last week, Thursday the 16th, we had the MEAC making their announcement. So we'll start there with the MEAC's announcement that they are suspending their fall sports. And I guess the first question, I'll run around the horn with you guys. Are you all surprised of the timing? I was most surprised by the timing from the MEAC when they made the announcement. I without any knowledge of background, and I don't know if you had got anything from your sources, Trevin, or maybe even Doc, but I was a little surprised that they made their announcement when they did it. I don't know whether it was based off of the timing, if the plans were already in place. I know that MEAC has sort of taken some hits in the public, in the media recently. It's been a tough summer for the MEAC. So I was just kind of surprised they would be the first conference. Although it should be noted, they weren't the first school, they weren't the first HBCU school to announce that they were suspending their fall sports. Actually, that designation goes to Hampton, who I'm going to recall the dates here. I think Hampton maybe came out on a Wednesday in the middle of the week, but Hampton came out first saying that they were suspending, and this is separate from any announcements that the Big South had made. So I'll start that first question, run it around AD, and then we'll just go around the horn. Any surprises with the timing by the MEAC's decision?
Not really. You know, like you said, MEAC has taken a big hit in the media in 2020. You go back to February with North Carolina A&T. Obviously, everybody took the hit in March with the tournament. And correct me if I'm wrong, was the MEAC one of the last ones to suspend a tournament during basketball? So they took a hit with that. Then we all know, Then we all know what happened in the month of June. First with Florida A&M University, then followed by Bethune-Cookman University. Then you had the rumors of Delaware State possibly leaving also. So the MEAC has really taken a hit this year. And I think by beating the SWAC to the punch, this may have given them a little bit of, you know, something good. They took the initiative. They went on ahead. They got out there. You've got the Hampton University's president. I don't know why, but his name is I'm drawing a blank right now. But he is a doctor, not a PhD, an MD, and it's important to note that because of his formal training, he's still a practicing MD. He is privy to knowledge and data and is able to feed other information to the other presidents and ADs, which, listen to the statements, seems like it was a real no-brainer for the MEAC. Let's go ahead and let's cut this for the safety of our students, and we'll deal with everything else on the back end, which don't take this the wrong way. Seems like the MEAC is getting good at dealing with everything else on the back end. So they had a lot of preparation for this, dealing with this situation on the back end. I'll turn it over to Trev. Oh, go ahead, Doc.
No, I was just going to say, you're talking about Wayne Frederick. And as you said, he is an MD instead of the traditional PhD or even JD that we see from the law side, or EDD from the educational side. But yes, he is a practitioner, as you talked about, in the medical field, a medical doctor. So he is up and close and literally getting the latest information on not just what is taking place that we're getting with a lot of the news media in terms of positive tests going up, the hospitalization rates, but he's also reading the medical journals, and he understands the language in terms of the medical journal in regards to how this will affect people later down in their life, as he's getting that updated information a little more than any president across this country, other than those ones that are medical doctors and or those deans that are medical deans over medical schools.
Such as Morehouse.
Exactly. It's the one at Howard University in itself, just to give some framing, no doubt.
And I think it was big. I'm not surprised with the timing at all. And I think with Dr. Frederick working so closely with the MEAC, I think that's a plus for the conference. Not only that, I mean, Howard University Hospital is right there, one of the biggest hospitals on the East Coast, and how Washington D.C. becoming a hotspot during the COVID situation. So he, as Doc was saying, Dr. Frederick got to see everything firsthand. With him seeing everything firsthand, I would think that he should have been, like the MEAC should have been in front of the SWAC. I mean, to be honest with you, that would only make sense. I think when you're talking about AD, the MEAC taking hits so far this year, 2020 hasn't been nice to them. I think that had they waited, so to speak, and the SWAC come out before them and say the SWAC is postponing, then I think people would have looked at the doc, like at Dr. Frederick, no disrespect by saying doc, but looking at Dr. Frederick and saying, well, wait a minute, why weren't you all the leaders in a sense? You made reference to the MEAC tournament. I think that the MEAC was the last to shut down because I was blessed to call the last game with Lamont, Germany, and coach. And that afternoon, they shut everything down. Well, Dr. Frederick and Commissioner from the MEAC pulled us all into the scope, into the conference room. And we had a press conference right there. And they talked about how everything was everything was shutting down and why. And I think that big ups to the MEAC because Dr. Frederick was there to explain the situation to the media. So the media could take that and run with it whichever way they wanted to, but you could not deny the fact that you had a medical doctor sitting in front of you speaking on behalf of the conference, letting you know exactly what's going on and why we're shutting down. So, I mean, kudos to them for that. But I'm not surprised with the timing. I think the MEAC should have been first.
Yeah, I'll be honest, Trevin and AD, more than ever, I guess I should say, as if I'm not honest regularly. But I was surprised. Now, I got the call from a source, since we're going to get in that a little more. I got a call from a source that literally told me that the MEAC presidents would be meeting the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And that they would be discussing canceling the season or postponing the season. And I guess we'll get a little bit in that, the difference with some of these media people out here understanding language and the difference between postponement and canceling. Maybe we can get in that a little bit as well. But as you said, Trevin, I will add this before I get into my little diatribe. I'm not sure if 2020 has been nice to many people at all. It's been a little different in regards to that. MEAC, yeah, exactly. The MEAC may have to take some solace in that. But to your points earlier, Bryan, in regards to how, I mean, Hampton being the first FCS HBCU to make the move, I thought was extremely intriguing, specifically from the fact that at the FCS level, you didn't see any programs taking the independent leap of making a decision. We saw that with the first HBCU, my understanding, to cancel fall sports, which was Houston-Tillotson University right here in Texas, in my backyard, as we call Austin, Texas, in terms of the capital. And then we started hearing about all these classics being canceled. Some questions in regards to some big matchups like the FAMU Southern, as FAMU was returning the trip, it was canceled. So you started seeing these little dominoes, and even before that, we heard even before all this really took off, the Division II conference out there in California stated it was canceled. Then all of a sudden you get this nice source report out there that talked about that the presidents would likely be making a decision the week after, right? And gave them some frameworks of why they believe this was taking place. And that proved to be quite accurate, unlike some other sources that are out there. But our friend, colleague, A.D. Drew, put that out there. And then all of a sudden, before that came out, we had the fact that Morehouse came out there. And it was really a big bang for a lot of us because they had a football program. When you go back to Houston-Tillotson, no football program. So you can see why it may not have danced around the market as much as the other people, why the California conference, way out there, as they call the West Coast, left coast, however you want to talk about it, that, you know, no football really talked about in that conference when they canceled it. So when we got our first football drop, we were like, wow, this is getting a little more serious in regards to athletics, what is taking place. Because everybody was pushing the narrative that somehow things would take place in the fall, that there would be football. You had coaches even coming out there, not only saying there would be football, you had some coaches that were daring enough at the Power 5 school saying there must be football. That's what they do. They got to play. They got to make us money, which is a whole nother conversation for another day, since we're specifically looking at HBCU. And then we're hearing this germination with the SIC, the CIAA. They essentially made a joint statement. We found out that the SIC was kind of leading that in a lot of ways. But I really like the fact that they partnered up and made a statement. Some of my sources were coming out and saying that maybe all the HBCUs were looking at making a statement. But there was a little difference between what was happening at the Division II level and the FCS level in regards to how they were going to make some decisions, contracts that were in place from FBS level. And the reason I will get to the final point, I said that it surprised me is I was hearing for the most part that the SWAC and the MEAC were working together in regards to, because of the partnership they had with the MEAC SWAC Challenge, as well as the Celebration Bowl. So all the indications that I was hearing that everything was full speed ahead. After I've kind of done some more research, is my understanding that when this meeting was taking place, but with the MEAC, while they all came out with the same decision, there was a lot of pace that they were looking at moving forward. And then some information came out by one of the presidents, or one of the individuals, I say at least, that was in the meeting that gave some updates on current events and what was taking place, information they were getting with the NCAA, which could have been the most recent report that came out that talked about all the items that needed to be in place for football to be played this fall, or any sports for that matter, which ultimately turned the whole conversation around in that meeting, where the president says that, no, we need to move forward. In addition to that, you had on the table, obviously, with two current MEAC schools that both of those programs will be leaving in 2021, North Carolina A&T and FAMU respectively, where you had athletes, essentially the first HBCU players that were testing positive for COVID. And there was some negative media attention associated with that. It kind of passed by us with North Carolina A&T, and then you had FAMU, and it was my understanding in the conversation to some degree that that weighed heavily on the presidents. And ultimately they came all together with people like Dr. Frederick giving essential medical information with the CDC reports, stuff they get with NCAA. They were like, no, we're gonna go ahead and pull the plug. And it's my understanding, in a lot of ways, it probably surprised the SWAC a little bit. And where they had to come out, I certainly know it surprised ESPN, although they told them when they made the final decision, ESPN, in regards to MEAC SWAC Challenge, as we know, they were planning to play the game Labor Day weekend. Now, we can question whether that made sense, but they had all the protection of how they were going to protect the people. Yeah, of how they were going to protect people. They were looking for the updates, but things were changing in a negative direction in Atlanta and the state of Georgia, obviously in Florida, obviously in Texas, Arizona, California, to name some more. And now we're finding even more so with Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. So which state in the South hasn't been touched, I guess you could really say, which is a sad indication in a lot of ways of what's going on in the South, because people wanted to open early. So to sum it all up, yes, I was quite surprised, but that gives you some backdrop of why I was surprised, because I was hearing that everybody was moving forward with due diligence, and they were basically kicking the can down the road, understanding that it was probably highly probable that they wouldn't play, but they weren't quite ready to make the decision.
So I you know, one of the things that a couple of thoughts there. As it relates to the positive test, as it relates to the positive testing from A&T and FAMU, I wasn't surprised by that, and I don't think anybody should have been surprised that you've got athletes coming from all over the state or region, country even,
right,
who probably have not been tested. We're getting together for the first time. We've seen it in other sports, in other schools, where those first initial tests, you have numbers. And my argument has always been that the percentage of players testing positive was always about the national average or less than, from what I had been seeing. And so I wasn't as shocked as I guess a lot of people were seeing the FAMU and A&T numbers. And I think for me, what has been, and I'm sure maybe for other people it's been frustrating, it has been bewildering. I think that's the word I'm looking for. The leadership or the lack of clarity that I have seen from the highest level, I can say from starting from our government, on down to organizations like this. I mean, the NCAA has been practically absent, I feel, and you all let me know if you've seen anything that would lead you to believe otherwise. They have been absent in sort of giving conferences some sort of clear direction on where things stand as it stands up today in this show. And we'll talk about the SWAC decision here shortly. 5 of 13 FCS conferences have decided to suspend fall sports. I think was the number I saw in a tweet. So you mean the NCAA is still planning to have an FCS playoffs? I mean, they haven't in Division II. How many conferences have suspended? I mean, I've seen some say they're delayed. Well, we know 2. No, 3.
You got 3.
Yeah, we know 3.
Yeah, it's like 6 or 7. It's quite a bit.
Okay, so I mean, but they're still planning on having the Division II playoffs. I mean, it's been bewildering. Go ahead. You sound like you were going to say.
No, I was going to say, Brian, I don't even mean to cut you off, but you're absolutely right. Well, but when you think about it, what can the NCAA say right now?
Sticking in with Trevin.
The minute that they say anything, they're opening themselves up to exposure right now. And think about it. And I think you and I have had this conversation before. My position on it is this. These are kids. These are students. So you as an organization are putting them, young adults, you're putting them on a playing field in the midst of a pandemic. You as the NCAA and a national organization, if you come out and say, okay, yes, we're good to go, and one of these kids, 10 of these kids, 20 of these kids get sick, I mean, you as the NCAA.
I'm not saying you, but Trevin, I'm not saying you have to give them the okay to play. I'm saying give them some guidelines and directions. Give them some standards. I mean, look, currently right now in the National Football League, they waited until the week of camps to actually come up with protocols. They've had all summer to come up with protocols to help, teams out. You mean the NCAA could not have come up with protocols to help schools out? I mean, they've known about this for all summer. I mean, all summer there have been opportunities. I mean, maybe that's wishful thinking. I don't know.
No, I don't have a problem with jumping on the NCAA. I always do it, so I'll jump on it some more. There's not a problem. But I will say this for the NCAA. I think they have been purposely vague.
Yes.
I think it's what they intend to do for an organization. And let me put it like this. This is one time I will say this about the NCAA. Because of their size and the width and what they do in terms of Division III, Division II, FCS, Division I, and Division I, FBS, and then the Power 5, you have all these different financial frameworks with different scholarships with all these organizations that have different ways that they could play the season. So they did put out some basic guidelines, but to your point, Brian, they weren't really enough, but I think they were enough. They were just that on purpose because they didn't want to tie anybody in. Mm-hmm. They had different constituents telling them different things. We know, for the most part, Power 5 has told us since day one that they plan to play. Everybody else was kind of like, hey, we're going to look at this and we're going to see. But, we don't have the budget. We don't have the financial disposition that the Power 5 schools have. So we may not be able to play. I know the SWAC was very out front saying that if there is no school, there's no sport. We still haven't got a very clear indication whether we will be on campus. And you're talking to a professor that gets updates weekly in regards to what our institution is going to do. At this point, we're looking at a hybrid model, but there's no final decision. This lets you know how flex we should be. While we have a hybrid model, which started with us coming back and being in the classroom, switch quickly to a hybrid model, they also told us to design our syllabus in the online format because it may have to go to online. Especially, we got to remember that this is a moving target. The cases are increasing. The hospitalization rates are increasing. And I know we just kind of want to dance around that, ignore that, but that has implications. People are dying. And so while it sounds nice in terms of, hey, this is a little 5% rate It's not really affecting these young people. We have to have consideration in regards to an institution. Do they want to have the negative spotlight? So even as you said in regards to the testing rate not being very well, the problem is you had newspaper articles being written out there that were putting a negative spin because they were saying if the pros hadn't been able to play or not doing this, or if the pros are talking about a bubble, why aren't you doing this with college students that are not even getting paid? So there's some people that have been seriously critical about the NCAA in different institutions. So it makes sense to me while these institutions were very concerned about what was getting out in terms of students being tested at a certain rate, even if it was at the norm standard that you're talking about, which makes a lot of sense when you're just talking about the trajectory. But we have to factor in regards to what was being said out there in this given situation. And this is the fact that while some of the A&T and FAMU surprised some people, the SWAC hadn't even brought students back. And they kept pushing it back in regards to when they would bring students back in this case. As my understanding, Morgan State essentially had students on campus, and they were fortunate that nobody tested positive. So that was a positive case and where this came out. But I think that we have to look at all those different things that play a part in regards to why there were some concerns about the news with people testing positive with COVID-19, specifically student athletes in this case.
You know, Doc, you bring up all the different levels of the NCAA division, FCS, FBS, Division II, Division III, yada, yada, yada. You know, I may be out here in the minority with this, but, you know, over the past 10 years, there's always been talk of the Power 5 schools breaking away from the NCAA and doing their own thing. You know, do not be surprised if, as this market corrects itself from the outcome of this COVID, if those Power 5s do not break away from the NCAA and form their own thing. And when I say those Power 5s, so everybody in the Power 5 will not go with that group because everybody does not have the wherewithal to go with that group. There's going to be, this is a clear case of haves and have-nots, not only at the FBS level, but at the FCS level, Division II, Division III. You're going to see some serious market correction over the next year because these universities cannot sustain some of the things they've been doing, especially when a bulk of your revenue comes from student activity fees. And I'm here to tell you, if I'm not on campus, if my child is not on your campus as a student, I will not be paying you a student activity fee because there is no activity for him to be a student act if he's not going to the basketball game, if he's not going to the football game, if he's not going to the rate room or the student act to do the shoot pool or whatever you do, what you do in the student act.
That's fine. We'll just roll it into another fee. We find ways around that. Hey, but no, in seriousness, you're right. You're right about that. That there are concerns in regards to what this looks like because a lot of students asked for rebates last year in terms of housing and food, and most of the schools that I've heard about provided some type of rebate. But I'm already hearing that they're making provisions at some institutions that suggest that if you decide to come, this is what it is. Don't look for a rebate and you're signing that away. It'll be interesting to see if that happens. We've seen that with hotels now where you would think, you know, some chains out there like Marriott, you book, you don't cancel a certain time, they'll keep all your money, which I think is quite ridiculous. And you see people going to book with other hotel chains because of those making decisions.
That's why I book on a prepaid card.
That happens to me in regards to what will take place if they don't make a change and amends to what happened to me. But all that in seriousness, I think it is intriguing when you talk about what is taking place in the marketplace. I used to think at one time that the Power 5 institutions would seek to break away. But as I studied a little more and the fact that they were able to get the autonomy, when I really studied this, they essentially have broken away now. They essentially do what they want to do now. They get 90% of the money now. I mean, I don't know how much more money they're really going to get by breaking away. And the way they have the autonomy, they have the rules, because a lot of people were thinking that they would break away from the standpoint that they would want to pay athletes so they could get out of that disguise and just do what they want in NCAA. But with autonomy, you see them do that with the meals when they were doing the cost of attendance. That's essentially a smaller fraction of paying for it. And all the schools in Division I don't even pay for the cost of attendance. And they made rules that gave them the autonomy. That's why they call them the autonomy 5, if you would. The power 5 is the latter term that we use, is so they could do that. So I think in a lot of ways, they essentially have broken away in all basic facets, other than them being governed under the NCAA. And let's not be fooled. The presidents run the NCAA, which is why you didn't have the information that you were seeking earlier, AD. And Brian talking about giving them the more information, and that's essentially because the presidents have to vote on it. The presidents made a decision.
Well, that's a good point.
In regards to that. The NCAA doesn't unilaterally make rules. The presidents of each division sets the rules and guidelines. So if they want to change it, they sit up there and tell the NCAA, this is what we're gonna do now. And they voted in. The presidents, the NCAA president, and the rest of them say, okay, this is what we'll be governed by now, and they keep moving.
And I think the one thing over there. I think the one thing that'll change what you're talking about, AD, will be the name, the name, image, and likeness bills that are coming up, not only in Florida. Who was the other state?
California.
California. Wasn't Texas a part of that as well? The Texas.
No, I hadn't heard of Texas making the rules, but
okay,
I know
so it was just...
New York was one. South Carolina was looking at it. I don't know if they actually implemented.
But Florida has plans to actually implement theirs before California, which made their announcement first.
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken.
They start next summer, 2021.
Right. Well, and so what I had read a report that the Power Fives were lobbying Congress to actually come up or be a part of creating laws to put some sort of laws in place regarding the name, image, and likeness, so that I guess they don't have to make that decision. Or,
yeah, they wanted to put artificial caps, is what we call it in the economy, in economics. And you're exactly right. They, the federal government, to get legislation where there would be a federal law in regards to the caps, because let's look at the reason why they can't do that. If they do that as the Power 5 institutions, it's obviously there's collusion on the tape, and which means that there needs to be a collective bargaining agreement, which is they don't want to do, because that means they give the players powers, because now the players are unionized, which is certainly powerful and beyond what you see at the professional level. So they're trying to circumvent this whole system and get around it in such a way that they can have these governing rules and try to have that cake and eat it too. They want to have this amateur model on one side, but a professional and business model, they like to call it the collegiate model, on the other side. It's simply anti-American in my opinion, because everything else in the United States and people that sing the praises of a capitalistic society is open market. Unless you have businesses that come together and collectively bargain. There goes that word again. At the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, right? They have a union, they have the ownerships, they have a commissioner, and what do? They get together and collectively bargain.
They don't want to give players a union. They don't want that to happen, obviously.
Right. So that's why they're asking the feds to step in and do this, which I think is fascinating to see a federal government, on both sides, especially you talking about from a Republican framework that says that they don't believe in government interference, but that's the ones they seem to be pushing to suggest that this is beneficial to them, while you have the Democrats that are saying, no, this is an open market system, so let it go. So it'll be interesting to see, can they push that forward and have their lobbyists, because that's what they hired. They hired lobbyists, and we know lobbyists are able to affect a lot of change because they have the money to do so. So we'll see just how much the money will get involved in regards to who will win this case at the NCAA level in regards to the governance structure to pay players. Because what they're nervous about is You get Florida doing one thing, California doing another thing. They can open it up in such a way that the caps come off, and you essentially have this bidding war, which I think would be beautiful in a capitalistic society.
Let me bring up one other thing here, and Trevin, you might be able to add into this from a MEAC perspective and regarding the Howard. AD, you brought up the athletic fee issue, and I know you brought this up in a couple other times, but there was a tweet that Stephen Gaither sent out earlier this afternoon. I don't know if any of you guys saw it, regarding North Carolina A&T students learning that they will be charged the full athletic fee of $435 for fall 2020, despite the postponement of fall athletics. Now, probably, let me see if I get the timeline here. It looks like let's see, when did Steve send that original tweet out? That was in the afternoon. So about 6 hours later from that tweet, let's see, and North Carolina A&T spokesperson did send him an email and said, I'll just read the email. He did tweet all this out. So props to Stephen Gaither. He's the message from a Todd Hurst Simmons says, "Hi, Stephen. Even though we have no athletics competition scheduled for the fall, we still have athletes who require our support, athletic, academic, medical, as well as facilities. Public universities and colleges in North Carolina are not permitted by law to cover athletic expenses with general revenue or tuition dollars, which leaves us very little flexibility to meet the cost of these programs. So we will be assessing the full athletics fee for fall 2020 in support of those ongoing needs." So I bring that up as a MEAC school still for another year. Trevin, do we know of any fees at Howard? I mean, do we know what the students at Howard pay for their athletic fees?
No, now I've heard, and nothing, I'm not representing Howard when I say this, but I've heard students talk about that they did have to pay some type of fee, athletic fee. And at Norfolk State, I don't know if they have to pay athletic fees or not. But my question is this, gentlemen, when you're looking at something like that, I'm going to take it a step further. I think that, and I think it was Vanderbilt, or there's a major university that laid off most of their, is it Vanderbilt? Yes, their SID and the staff. So think about it that way. If you're not getting a fee, let's say that athletic fee not only just covered athletics, but it covers the coverage. You got people there that would still cover sports. So if you no longer need those people, you need or if you still have them without the sport, you still need to pay those people. I'm not totally against the students being charged an athletic fee. I would call it something else if I was a university, because you would have the opportunities there for you to do that. I don't think you just have to be so blatant and to say, okay, yeah, Trevin A. Jones, you're going to Norfolk State this year, and as Norfolk State, I'm going to charge you for athletic fees. Oh, by the way, there's not going to be any sports. So unless you
athletic support. Athletic support fee. There you go.
The athletic support fee. It's still support, though, when you think about the departments that have to cover the sports, because those departments are still getting out information about the brand, about the institution. And don't forget, those athletes are still there. So if you get out information about these athletes, it's the prime time for you to big up your athletes now. Now it's the prime time for you to be able to get personal and give out information about the athletes, which would generate interest for the upcoming season. So I don't know anything about Howard and them paying athletic fees, but that's just my 2 cents.
But can I put it in can I throw another penny on top of that? I got to go next on this one, Doc. Obviously, I brought it up. Trevin, Doc, I don't know if you guys
Shame
know.
on you, AD!
I have my accounting degree from Florida A&M University.
Okay.
I have an economics degree from Tuskegee University. So when it comes to numbers, how can I put this? You can't BS me when it comes to numbers. All right. You said $435, Brian. Was that the number that you used?
That's the number that Steven posted in the tweet, $435. And I got my calculator out, so go ahead and give me the next number I think you're going to give me.
Okay. Of that $435 per student, how much goes towards what? Like, if you were to break that $435 down, Does that $435 cover the scholarship for the students? You know, they're 36 for football. Excuse me, no, they're 65 for football.
I thought you were going to ask me about timesing that by 12,000 students on campus. I had already had that number ready for you.
Well, go ahead, throw it out there. Go ahead, throw it out there. I wouldn't even go get to that part.
The $5.2 million that comes from student athletic fees?
Of the $10 billion budget that they have, approximately $10 billion. So half of the budget comes from that from student activity fee.
And that's 12,000 students at $435 a piece.
But you and I both know the scholarships is really, there's no cash with those scholarships. All that is a line item adjustment on your budget. I'm the accountant. I know that. The money is already there. All you do is shifting money from one spot to the other. That's number one. Yes, the people, the support staff, and the things like that, there does need to be some fee to cover those to make sure that you can. Because you still have kids who are rehabbing from injury, so you still need your sports medicine department, whether they're there or not. Like Trevor said, you still need your SIDs. You still gonna need some coaches. But you don't have referees to pay for anymore. Because we all know that that's not covered out of the gate fee, because we've been to some of these games. We know how many people come to some of these games. Some of these teams do not make enough money to pay for your referees, your parking, and all your support staff, the 20 million police officers that you have that are on duty, but you don't have those expenses either that you have. So the economist to me and the accountant to me, I need to see both sides of the equation and see where my money is going and what's left to be paid. You show me what's left to be paid, I don't mind paying my fair share. Out of that $435, you say 150 of it is left, bill be the 150. No problem. No way in hell I'm paying the full 435. Doesn't make mathematical sense to me.
You'll have a bill when you get back to school.
Thank you, Doc. Tell them you have a bill waiting on you. You won't get your diploma.
Community college.
I know a lot of people who fought that battle, and you waited years to get your diploma. I know a lot of people who did that.
Yeah, in terms of your degree, that's right. So with that, it sounds like we have a lot of entanglement going on here.
Oh, there's that word. There's that new word. That's a 2020 word also.
I'm just saying, or as we say in a lot of other ways, it's complicated. Really, it's complicated.
That was 2019.
That sounds like it's complicated on purpose, Doc.
It really is. But let me let you all in on a secret. There's only about 15 institutions across this country at the intercollegiate level that actually make money in sport. I'm serious about that. Only about 15, no more than 20 institutions make money. One of the things people really don't realize is that the institutions are subsidized that play sports. Now, it's huge in this country, and people will make arguments on the research side that it does things for your enrollment when your athletic sports do well. You've heard the proverbial thought processes that sports is the front porch to your institution. People have missed that, and they talk about the rest of the sentence that goes on there when you talk about it's the front porch to what else you do in the university, which is extremely important as well. But with that context, usually what you have is about institutions at best probably are able to generate anywhere from 5, if you're lucky, maybe 20% of your athletic budget from outside sources. The rest of the budget is internal. The key thing that you want to know about your internal budget is most public institutions are not allowed to use state legislative funds for athletics, which means they need to come out of the general fund, right, to do it, or designated fees, which is student athletic fees. And when you talk about that, which makes it truly complicated when you talk about doing the accounting, where you are doing some shifting of funds. That is very true, because you're paying on one side athletic scholarship for athletes that is going back into the budget. to pay for those scholarships back to the institution. So you're doing some transfer there. But I think we also have to be careful from the seriousness of athletics when you look at those athletic fees. Usually in most states, athletic fees are fees that have to be voted on by the student government of that institution. The students have to vote on that. That is not something that an institution can unilaterally by their board of trustees or board of regents certify. Now, those boards of regents, boards of trustees, those boards, if you would, they have to ratify it, but usually SGAs have to vote on it. So if it's a voting mechanism, even if the institution wanted to be honest with you, they just can't cut those fees, even if they should, because they would need the SGA body to vote on it, which obviously is going to be very challenging to do in this environment. So they're going to have to find another unique way to do it, which is totally different from our private institutions, where they don't necessarily have to report where their money comes from, but in some ways it's coming from the institution operational. And that's why you see in places like Stanford and Vanderbilt that had extremely high costs because their tuition is high, decide to eliminate some sports. Now, do I feel as sorry for Vanderbilt and Stanford in regards to that? No, they're getting the Power 5 money. They're getting significant checks from their conference affiliation, especially if you're in the SEC with Vanderbilt. And the bigger thing, the money is generated off essentially two sports, football and basketball, which we know is played by a large percentage of African Americans. In the Southeastern Conference, you're talking about more than 70% of those teams are African Americans who are generating the revenue. African Americans, blacks, are generating the wealth and revenue for these non-revenue generating sports, right? Which are played mostly by European Americans or whites. That is called welfare. Athletic welfare is the term that I use. And I don't necessarily have a problem with it. When I have a problem with it is consistency. You will have one group of Americans in one side of society, and they will tell you welfare is bad, that you shouldn't have a group of people paying for other groups of people. And I'm not saying one way or the other. I think there's a rationale that you can say that you should help people. If you have it, even if it's nothing more than a biblical framework that you should do for others. What I do have a problem with is inconsistency. If it's not good in one side of the market, it shouldn't be good in the other side. So legislate stuff evenly. So if we're not going to do it for the masses of people, especially when it's flipped, when it's European Americans and wealthy middle-class folks saying that they have to pay for these poor white people or African American in this market, then why should it be reversed in athletics when you have African Americans generating this wealth and having to pay for European Americans, the black and white issue? And I know people get concerned when you talk about racism or race, what I prefer to call ethnic groups in this country, but it's the truth. So I'm a professor and I like to put the truth on the table in regards to putting information out there and let people make their own decisions. But that's where I say, in all seriousness, it's complicated.
You know what, Doc, that's a good point. And what I want to do is add on that. I'm going to piggyback on that just for a second. I don't like the hypocrisy of what's going on in college sports right now. What I mean by hypocrisy is that college sports, and I don't know, I wasn't around in the 20s and the 30s, to be honest with you, but college sports has gotten away from the welfare of the athletes. You
sure you wasn't around then?
Come on, man. 06. But anyway, I call myself a romantic when it comes to college football. I'm a college football fan, diehard college football, everything college football and basketball before pros. That's just how I roll. And that's where my interest is, especially when it comes to HBCUs. That's a passion. That's just in me, something from years back. But my point is this. Even in your conversation, AD brought it up. We talked about, and when Bryan brought it up, we talked about an athletic fee that the students would be paying. That's for the athletics. Well, the athletics is for the students, should be. The athletics is really for the general public who is spending money that would towards the institutions for the actual sports. as you said, Doc, and I like the way that you said it, and I've never heard it broken down that way when you talk about welfare. Well, that's welfare from a certain perspective. Because when it doesn't affect you, it's a bad thing. But when it's affecting you, okay, well, yeah, we need that in place. And I totally get that. But my whole position is this. I'm tired of seeing everything not geared towards the benefit of the athletes. And some people will argue with me and say, well, these athletes are getting scholarships. Well, these athletes are students. They're in school to get the education. The scholarship is to help them get their education. That's what it should be. But you and I know, and everybody that's even watching, that these scholarships go to these students was so that they can continue to funnel the money for the school, because the school is getting paid from TV contracts and all of that. And when you look at the Power Five, that's all about the schools. That's not even about the kids playing or young adults, as Bryan said. It's not even about the young adults playing, because believe me, if they didn't have the talent to be on the field, they wouldn't be on the field. So they wouldn't be generating money. So it's just the hypocrisy that I'm seeing in college sports. It starts to bother me, and it's getting worse. And if there's a silver lining in 2020, if these young men and gentlemen and women don't get to play, and I don't want you to be mad at me, college student athletes that are watching. I don't want you to be mad, because I am looking out for your welfare, for your health, because you have a bright future. And something like this, if you get out on those fields, on those courts, and you get sick, there are people dealing with ramifications from having COVID-19 getting better, and they still have things wrong with them. Some of them still can't breathe. Some of them may not be able to see right. Some of them might have lost their equilibrium. So that's dangerous. So instead of the NCAA, and Bryan, you alluded to this earlier, the NCAA is being like Casper on purpose. But instead of them coming out and saying, you see the commercials that say there's an NCAA students in every profession, and they show the different athletes playing different sports, showing that they came through the NCAA to play and became a doctor or an attorney or whatever, but they came through a sport to get there. Well, I don't see that going back to them. I think it should be, on the health and the welfare of students. The focus should be, but I don't see it being that. I see it, and our whole conversation and many shows are going in the other direction. It's all about money, man. We're talking about the money that comes from these games being played. And I know schools need it, conferences need it, but at the same time, I'm just totally disappointed because we're not looking out for the welfare of the students. Kudos to the MEAC. Kudos to the SWAC. Kudos to Morehouse. Kudos to the SIAC and the CIAA. Kudos to the Patriot League, because you stood up and you said, look, it's about the welfare of the students. We are not playing this fall.
Well, if nothing else, Trevin, COVID-19 and 2020 is definitely putting the focus back into what colleges are truly supposed to be about, which is getting an education first, and it seems like that is happening, and so it's a balancing. It's almost a balancing. Which is happening right now, and hopefully a lot of schools, a lot of programs, conferences will come out a little more socially responsible, more responsible towards the athletes, and I guess we'll just have to wait to see financially what happens. That'll be the only X factor in all of this. But I sadly I don't think you can have both. So I don't think you can, have your finances and we haven't seen it. I guess we haven't truly seen it work as you've proposed, or as you stated. It hasn't worked towards the true benefit of the student athlete, and I guess now it's going to have to at this point. Let's do this. So I want to get into talking about truth in reporting. Coming up out of the break here, I want to take a quick break. So maybe if we got some sponsors, we can dip those in there and potentially generate some revenue for this thing we're doing. And then when we come back, we will get into talking about truth in reporting as it relates to some of the news that came out regarding the SWAC. So give us a quick moment. We'll be back. You're watching the BCSN SportsWrap. We'll be back right after these words.
Let's face it, Shopping for insurance can be time consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
It was a monumental game for A&M and Tampa. It was a monumental game. Somebody had to lose, and thank God it was them this time.
We knew it was going to be a battle. Look at Jake Avis' record. 202 and 36, I think. Some off-the-wall figures.
And nobody would play him because they didn't want to take a chance of getting beat. But the truth of it is,
over 46,000 tickets. Blacks were sitting in the east stands. The whites were sitting in the west stands, and the score wound up 34-28.
The only thing we proved that we wasn't inferior, that we were not inferior, and we were not afraid.
For one night, for 160 minutes, we was better than them.
Welcome back to the BCSN SportsWrap. Bryan and A.D. here, joined by Dr. Keynatta Cavil from Inside the HBCU, from Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU SportsLab, and Trevin Jones from UrbanMediaToday.com. And I want to remind you to make sure to follow us on social media at MyBCSN1. Of course, it's your search also on Facebook for the Black College Sports Network, and the look us up, the BCSN Sports Wrap. And of course, on YouTube, if you're watching us, MyJBN Online, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to us on those platforms if you would. Also, make sure to take a look and make sure you're tuned in to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, live show with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, and always a good show covering everything primarily from a SWAC perspective, but Doc gets into covering everything HBCU, no doubt. And then, of course, Trevin, Urban Media Today, every Saturday. You can find his show on UrbanMediaToday.com. What was the time again on your show, Trevin?
10:30 a.m. Eastern, and we start we have a sports Saturday morning, a podcast Saturday morning on UrbanMediaToday.com, starting as early as 8:30 and going up until after our show at 10:30. We have Hey Girl Hey on at like 9:30, which is an excellent show as well. So podcast Saturday mornings on UrbanMediaToday.com.
There you go. Beautiful. All right. So coming out, and obviously that's what I love about this show is, and we will always, whatever we may script, we will sometimes go off into different into different I don't want to call them tangents, but we'll travel down different roads, maybe unexpected roads. And so definitely that last segment, we went down some interesting roads, talked about some interesting things as it related to the MEAC and just some of the news that came out of that. But then, of course, the on Friday, this past weekend, the news started coming out following the MEAC's announcement that the SWAC was making plans. Hold on, I want to read this exactly because I got to give credit where credit is due, and if I can find the actual time frame, because time matters.
Yeah,
time matters.
As you looking that up and going to read it directly, I did want to get an update because we'll be going on a little early tomorrow. We'll do a 2-hour special from 5 to 7 Central Time. The first hour, we plan to interview Dr. Charles McCullen. So tune in. You're hearing it first here, that we will have the commissioner of the SWAC, Dr. Charles McCullen, on tomorrow to talk about the news in regards to the SWAC postponing the fall athletic season.
But Doc, I gotta ask this: after you have Charles for that first hour, what is there even to do in the second hour, man? You've done everything during that first hour.
Well, we're gonna actually. I'm glad that you asked that. That's an important context. We're gonna actually discuss what that interview was about. We're gonna go and give our personal opinions about the interview, because the first part is really gonna be a lot about asking questions and him giving answers. Then we'll give you our perspective, somewhat of like what we're doing now in regards to just opining over the decision and different questions of why we thought the decision came about and those type of things. So first hour is the interview. Second hour is about us opining over the interview.
Good stuff.
All right, so I was looking for the actual time, but let's just say a good friend of the show who's on this podcast was the first to report that his sources had informed him that the SWAC was having a meeting on July 20th about to discuss their plans for the upcoming season. Okay, that came out that morning of Friday. Now, you know, our friend did not publish that out first. Shared it with some other folks, and sure enough, as it got shared, other people tweeted it out and made it known. You know, which, you know, okay, made it known. And then all of a sudden, those people started getting credit for being the first to report it. That irked me a little bit. That irked me a little bit personally. I'm just being honest right here on the show. Okay. So later, though, in that same day, National College Football Insider Brett McMurphy sent out a tweet. Now, this tweet by the timeline would be 5 o'clock in the afternoon. His tweet: Southwestern Athletic Conference will announce Monday it is canceling fall sports, sources told at the stadium. Brett McMurphy works for the stadium. SWAC is the latest FCS league that won't play football in the fall. It was like, whoa, what? And so our friend simply responded, that is not accurate reporting. Hashtag unfortunate. Beautiful response, by the way. So, and that sparked an interesting discussion amongst Black college media, because it seemed all weekend, because it seemed like because of one tweet by Brett McMurphy, despite other tweets from other sources, I mean, pretty much everybody else in Black college media was reporting that no decision had been made, but that there just was going to be a meeting on Monday to make to make a formal decision or come to a decision about what was happening. Nobody was out there saying this is definitely going to happen. Am I correct on that, guys? Did you see anybody in Black college media saying without a doubt that the season was going to be canceled?
No.
Okay? No. Nobody but Brett McMurphy, who came out and said that Monday they are canceling. That tweet even got a response from the SWAC commissioner, who basically, Dr. Charles McClellan, came out and said that statement, correct me if I got the words wrong, he said that statement is 100% false.
What he said?
Yeah, 100% false, not accurate. So I will turn the floor over to our friend of the program, who was the first with the information and who responded quickly to Brett McMurphy, and tell us about why his tweet was inaccurate. I now turn the floor over to our friend of the program, Dr. Keynatta Cavil.
Well, I refuse to even say the gentleman's name because I don't think he deserves any more credit than he should get in this case. And I thought it was disingenuous for somebody that doesn't even cover the SWAC, doesn't really care about the SWAC or care about HBCU sports in general, to feel that he had the liberty to get out in front of information that obviously was leaked to him and not even verify the source, not take it back once he understands that he's incorrect. Somebody that I know called him personally and told him that it was incorrect, and he still was like, I have my source. So I just thought that was ridiculous and incredibly insensitive in a time that we're talking about being more sensitive to African Americans, Black Lives Matter, which leads to Black institutions or African institutions, African American institutions, however you would have it. Specifically, in this case, HBCU. And as you said, we had Black media, HBCU media, just media in general, call the commissioner and tell him directly that a decision hasn't been made. And let me get this fact straight. The athletic directors had a meeting on Friday to get some updates. And when I say athletic directors, I'm saying athletic directors of the SWAC. The vice presidents of athletics is another term they use, to give them some updates in regards to that things may not be looking very well. But it was stated unequivocally that Monday that the presidents would be meeting and chancellors in regards to their standard meeting on how they would move forward with the fall season. And I just see that disrespectful for this gentleman. And I say that with all due respect, because I still think that he deserves that part of it, but I will not acknowledge his name in regards to being a professional in this business and not even having the jurisprudence to at least provide an update and take it back once he found out that he was not correct. And the format that it goes in is like, these are all recommendations. Coaches make recommendations to the senior women administration and or the athletic director, vice president of athletics. The athletic directors, VPs of athletics make a recommendation to the commissioner. The commissioner takes that information to the conference presidents and or chancellors. Some call them the executives of the conference. And then those individuals that lead the university are responsible for making the decision of the conference. That is across the country how that takes place. And so not to have the same level of respect for the Southwestern Athletic Conference disturbed me to its core, because I think it's very disingenuous for to act like that you have the unmitigated gall to put this out there and not take it back once you learn better. It's one thing to make a mistake, but once you know that you made a mistake and you get a commissioner to tell you directly that this was not true, 100% incorrect, and you try to stand by it, shame on you.
That's an interesting fact coming out about him actually being called. And I'm scrolling through his replies to see maybe did he add a tweet, and there was no such clarification or any sort of who knows, very very few times do people delete tweets, or even when you delete it, it's still out there. It's never truly deleted. But yeah, there was no acknowledgement. There was nothing on Twitter, and it brought up an interesting debate amongst us, and just about how we have become so conditioned with how we receive information that gentlemen like him, who are insiders, quote unquote insiders, who have all these sources, they've built up a following of over 220,000 followers because of, I guess, the belief that the information that he provides is something that no one else can get. I mean, we've seen it on the pro side. There's tons of insiders. I mean, that's how guys are making their living, quote unquote, is who can get it first, who can get it out there. And a lot of times we're not seeing the accuracy being really paid attention to. So I just get your thoughts on that, Trevin, and then AD, your thoughts on just the way we're conditioned to receive information and just the way this one kind of went down.
If I may, I heard everything you said, Doc, and Brian, I heard you as well. And I know AD is going to drop some knowledge on us in a minute. But I'd like to pose this to you, gentlemen. I don't know that gentleman that you're speaking about, and I'm not one of his followers. But it's not just him. It's mainstream media shows the disrespect to the Black media coverage. And it's like, I don't like the word expert because nobody's perfect. But at the same time, There are so many people covering Black college sports from a Black college perspective that goes ignored and ignored by mainstream media. So I think that it shows like this are great because it actually points out the fact that, hey, get it right. And I like what Doc said. Doc was first, but he understood that it's not important to be first. It's important to be right and have correct knowledge. And when you're putting that correct knowledge out there, now you're educating the masses. But and I always call it chasing stories. That's why I never, even with urban media today, and I learned at Sheridan Broadcasting, I never chased a story to be first. I always went after a story so that I had the best information and the most accurate information that I could have, so that when I put my story out there, it would have longevity. And then others could follow behind or be right beside me, but they could build on the story that I placed out there, knowing that every step they're taking based on the words that I wrote or the words that I said over the air were the correct words. And I think that's the most important thing. So I put the challenge to us as Black media to not worry about chasing the story and being first, but to have it accurate, to have it right, so that those that are following behind you, because there will be those that follow behind you, you best believe, when you don't think people are watching, they're watching, that they will have the faith and confidence to know, okay, this is accurate. That way we will overpower the disrespect that we're getting from mainstream media and make them respect us.
AD? You've had your own experience with this, so this is your thoughts. I definitely, you got some feelings on this one.
Boy, do I. But first, before I even get into my personal thoughts on this, I was listening to Carlos Brown over the weekend, his show.
I heard it so too.
And yeah, he hit it home, just like Trevor said. Is it better to be first or better to be right? And he also brought out something else: fact versus opinion. And too often, journalists will turn opinions into facts. Let's go back to that tweet. The fact was there was a meeting scheduled on Monday. That was a fact. You can't dispute that. What he should have said, and this is coming from Carlos Brown. I'm just regurgitating what he said this weekend. What the guy should have said was, in my opinion, I think that they will cancel, suspend, postpone, whatever adjective you want to use, the season on Monday. That would have been a great tweet. You've got a fact. You've laid down your fact or stats that shows why you formed this opinion. Now, I don't write articles for the website too often. And the reason why I don't write articles for the website as often as I want to, because I got a lot of stuff up here I really need to get out, but it's easier for me to get it out on this podcast than to sit down and write it. Because if you've actually looked at my articles, they're based with a lot of fact and research. Yeah, I put all those facts and stats and research in there to show you why I came to this conclusion. But let's go back to the article I did about realignment. There were a lot of facts in there, a lot of references in there that guided me towards those conclusions. And I'm probably batting thus far about 700 on that article. If you go back and look at that article, I'm batting about 700 right now. The article that I put out on the SIAC, I got most of that right. I got more right than I got wrong with that article. And the one thing that is disrespectful to journalism, period, and I am not a professional journalist, but I study my craft and I work every day to make myself better at this craft. And the one thing they would tell you, you do not put out a single source fact as gospel. First of all, you should never put out a single source piece of information. You should have multiple independent sources. If you've got multiple independent sources telling you the same thing, then that's something that you can run with. But for him to put a single source out there as this is going to happen based on this one source who may or may not be reliable, but how many times has that reliable source been wrong? Because they've been fed misinformation. Sometimes they've been intentionally fed misinformation as people try to find out where the leak is at. I'm just saying, it's happened. It happens to you in the business world. It happens to you in journalism. Now, here's where I go off. For us as Black media, I'm not worried about the mainstream media, but for us as Black media to take, some of us to take what this man said, who is not an insider, who really don't, excuse my language, don't give a damn about HBCU sports, and take what he said as the gospel. And I saw how many people in Black media retweeted, reposted, forwarded, and everything. His tweet as it was gospel. Who the hell is this man in Black media? He's a nobody. But then you take, and now, yeah, I'm in my feelings when I say this, and I've been in my feelings for a couple of days. Now you take something that I did, something I researched, I back with stats, I back with facts, and you ignore it. Why? Why Black media? Why do we do ourselves like this? If you had questions about it or anything about that, Trevin invited me on his show. I got invited on another podcast.
Yep.
But when the SIAC did drop 2 days later, when they did drop the nugget that they did nobody go back and say, outside the people in our small circle, go back and say, good job, AD. You got it right. You got most of it right. Yeah, you might have missed on that one thing, but in the spirit of what you wrote, you got it right. Didn't see that in Black media. Why do we do ourselves like that? We're supposed to uplift each other as brothers.
It's funny you mentioned that.
Soapbox.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm glad, between Trevin and the other show, and help me remember the other gentleman whose show you did, AD.
Now you got me going. I
believe
Dr. Jones, I believe it is.
Don't worry about it. What I'm going to say is, in that kind of story,
Dr. Mike Robinson, I'm sorry.
Mike Robinson, okay.
Yes.
I listened to that. More people should have had, besides just Trevin and Mike Robinson, more people should have had you on their shows. That's all I'm going to say. More people should, because of the information, because of the information and access you were able to source, and it was from multiple sources, not just two, multiple sources. I know that from the back and forth that we had.
And let's think about this. And Doc mentioned my article on his show, but let's think about this. And Bryan and Doc know this. Trevin, you don't know this. I sat on this information for 2 to 3 days before I released it. So I was not trying to be first, like you said. I wanted to make sure that I was right. Not only did I want to make sure that I was right, we reached out to the SIAC office for a statement. This is the information that we have found out before we even did any further investigation. This is what we found out. Do you guys have anything to say about this? They refused to comment. So at that point is when I started digging even deeper. That's how investigative journalism. Oh, one more thing. Got my props from Eric Moore over at Onarden. He did contact me also and tell me a good job. I want to shout out Onarden for that also. But a very small circle, appreciated that.
Which is going to get bigger because we all know in 2020.
And I will say what.
Yes.
Yeah, what's interesting about that timeline of waiting a couple of days is we waited very similar to what you saw from Dr. McClellan, who came out and responded. Reason we sat on it for a couple of days, just to let everyone know, we wanted to see whether there was going to be a response or a statement coming out from the SIAC. They did not release a statement until after Drew published a post and we posted it out. That's when all of a sudden, oh, let's make a statement. So it's not that's set for 48 plus hours because of that. So back to the SWAC, and this gets into the details. The devil's in the details, Doc. I want to say I've heard you say that somewhere before. The canceling versus the postponement and suspension. Those are some words that I find very interesting. As of today, the SWAC has decided to suspend, and I want to make sure I get it right, because God help me if I get anything wrong from the from the actual statement from the SWAC. Okay, so from the SWAC general release statement dated July 20th, 2020, the Southwestern Athletic Conference has announced the postponement of all scheduled fall contests along with SWAC championships due to continuing concerns related to COVID-19. Keyword, postponement. While other conferences of note, the MEAC used the word suspend, SIAC and the CIAA used the word suspend. And what I found interesting is, along with the word postponement, is that the SWAC actually has a plan in place, which includes a 7-game conference schedule beginning with an 8-week training period in January 2021. Each member institution will play a total of 6 conference games, 4 divisional, 2 non-divisional, with the option to play 1 non-conference game. And nationally, it is being praised as one of the first conferences to actually have a plan in place, and not just speculate and opine about, oh, what are we going to do? We're just going to kind of sit and wait to see what's going to happen. The SWAC is actually putting a plan in place, and we'll see what happens. I mean, if at least there's a plan in place. So, Doc, I wanted to come to you and say, as you see the everything that's taken place over the course of the weekend and the reaction, what is your thought on what you've seen by the SWAC and Dr. McClellan?
Well, simply put, I've been, and I'll say this word truly, I've been blessed to work with Dr. Charles McCullen, as we call him now, back when he was Chuck at Prairie View A&M University, and an undergraduate student with me on the Hill down there. The other hill, since I have some family rattlers on the show, on the western side, the Southwest to be exact, in the state of Texas, Prairie View, Texas. Down there when he was in the School of Business and I was in the he was in the College of Business and I was in the College of Engineering. Just to talk about how our paths have grown over the years. I've literally seen him grown and really become a professional and really unique about his craft. And there was no doubt as I was getting more information from him in regards to how accurate this statement was on Friday when this kind of came out, that no, he said there was work to be done and they were genuinely putting a lot of efforts and work in regards to what they would potentially do on Monday. And he made it clear. He said, I provide information to the presidents and chancellors, and they ultimately make the decision based on what's going on in their state, what's going on politically within their state, in terms of how they possibly could move forward one way or the other. And so it gives me that type of indication that this is one that I was not surprised when he came out with a full plan, because in my understanding, in a lot of ways, that's what they were working on. That's why they really unnerved a lot of people that study this from a business perspective, as I talk about all these books up here that my students have to read in seeking a BS in sport management, seeking a master's in sports studies and sports leadership, whether it's from The Audacity of Hope, Benching Jim Crow, Unsportsmanlike Conduct, The Secret Game, Requiem for a Classic, Black Men in the Huddle, Breaking the Lines, Football at Historically Black Colleges, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Thursday Night Lights, Across the Line, Breaking Through, Indentured, the athletic experience at historically Black colleges and universities, to name just some of the collection of books that I have in regards to studying this craft. And the reason that I bring that up is because Dr. Charles McCullin, when he was the VP of athletics at Texas Southern University, actually taught in that program. One of the few VPs of athletics or ADs across the country that teaches undergrad students in a sport management type program. And so I know that he understands the business of sports and he takes it very serious in terms of his craft. And so the fact that he put in that due diligence of work and he's getting the national praise that he deserves in regards, along with all of his SWAC presidents and chancellors, doing that work, I think it's well-deserved and extremely timely. And as I often am, I'm proud of the SWAC. I'm proud of the HBCUs for leading the way. Back to our NAIA institutions when I started with Houston-Tillerson University, making the move, including Wiley College, Langston University at the NAIA level. And I wouldn't be surprised at the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference. I'm gonna reach out to the interim commissioner, Dr. Kiki Baker-Barnes, because I know she's working hard in regards to what they're gonna do with that conference moving forward. And I don't wanna leave them out. But then when you have the SIAC by Commissioner Moore, you have the CIAA by Commissioner Wig, you have Dr. Dennis Thomas with the MEAC, and now Dr. Charles McCullin with the SWAC, making this decision along with these other FCS schools and Division II schools. Let me give them all credit in regards to the HBCU specifically leading the way in regards to making sure that they have the college athletes first in a lot of ways. And so it's dynamic when you start looking at breaking down words between canceling, meaning there is no more, that this is the end, that it will stop, versus using postponement, which means that you are taking a literal break and you're going to postpone it with the intent to pick it up later, versus a suspension, which you usually hear when you're in the middle of something and you take a break and with the idea that you're going to pick it up later. So it's important when we talk about the context, and this is something that I really impress on my students, whether they're in sports entertainment in the School of Communication, or whether they're in the College of Education for sports management at the Texas Southern University. Words matter. And so when you're studying about your craft, and I don't care what it is, I always tell my students, become an expert in your field, and people will come and find you. And you won't have to worry about finances because you have something to say and people want to hear it. And people are going to ultimately pay you very well for that knowledge that you have. So this is not just for us. This is for anybody out there that understands the level of dedication that a lot of us put in our craft, and a lot of us that really think highly on HBCU sports or professional sports that happen to be played by African-American and professionals. And that's why you see us working together collectively, and we plan to expand this even bigger. And I hope y'all don't get beside the point, because I snuck it out a little bit earlier in a tweet, and I'll do it again now. We're working on something that we think is big in regards to making sure the frustration that you had together, that we come together as a collective to create a collective empowerment in regards to Black media or HBCU media, whatever you would have it, or great media, as I would like to say it, in terms of HBCU Pro Sports Media Association. So keep your eyes on it, that we are serious about our craft, we're serious about this work, we're serious about HBCU sports and the coverage that we believe they deserve, and we're gonna do everything in our power to make sure that it continues. And whether we get the support of those that wanna be colleagues and be supportive of us, or those that don't, I simply say get out the way, because we're coming.
Let me, if I could, read a couple of quotes here from Dr. McClellan that were tweeted out by Heather Dinich of ESPN. Actually, it's in a story that she posted about an hour ago. Full story on the SWAC, specifies plans for spring football season as part of as part of fall sports postponement. And again, that in itself, the SWAC being the first league to actually have a plan and put out publicly what their plan is for the spring, lots of praise from college football insiders all across the country, not just within the black college media or black media, but also the general populace. So again, those quotes by Dr. McClellan, we wanted our fans to have something to look forward to. We wanted our student athletes to have something to look forward to. And we feel like this is a sustainable plan that will allow us to be able to get it done. Virus permitting, of course. If there is no vaccine, if the numbers are still high, there won't be a spring. We are not going to force playing. All of this is predicted on the fact the pandemic by March is under control. So I'll turn it over to you, Trevin, and then AD. Your thoughts on the announcement and just sort of the media reaction as it's taken place.
No doubt. I mean, first and foremost, kudos to the SWAC for having a plan. And I think that shows leadership. They're looking, even mainstream America is looking for leadership at the college level. We spoke about the NCAA earlier, so I don't have to get into that. But at least they're showing leadership. Dr. McClellan is doing his thing as what he's supposed to do. He's the commissioner of the SWAC. And he's letting you know, as a commissioner, I'm doing my due diligence, as Doc would say, and I'm putting it out here so that you have hope. It's always good to give people hope, something to look forward to. I'm not coming down on anybody that cancels anything at this season, at this point, and saying, okay, it's all over, because I think that's for the best interest of the athletes as well. But at the same time, what Dr. McClellan is saying is, look, we may not even have a spring, but in case we are allowed to have a spring, here is something that we're working towards. So it's giving you hope. So it keeps you going. That's something that keeps you moving forward and not staying still and being stale or moving backwards. My concern when I heard it was, wait a minute, in my head, I'm thinking, are we going to have 2 football seasons in 1 year? Which is possible that you can have a spring football season and then turn around and have football in the fall if everything clears up. I don't see that happening, but I'm not going to be a negative spirit on this. I appreciate the fact that you're giving us hope. So kudos to the SWAC for that. And it's interesting to hear you say that mainstream media is now picking up on that and saying kudos to Dr. McClellan and the SWAC for having a plan. So all you can do is stand up and applaud.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of concerns about the spring, but I'm gonna do more research on that. But I agree, having a plan is better than nothing, which is what you're seeing from a lot of other conferences. I'll be honest, I thought, with the SEC making they're still, I mentioned SEC because they seem to be the conference that everybody looks to, even though you've seen other conferences in the Power Five make decisions to go conference only. The SEC is still considered the power league. And I think everyone is kind of waiting to see what they do, because I think if the SEC were to do something similar to what the SWAC did, and I mean, there would be ramifications, obviously, but they'd be doing it because of health and safety concerns, but it would also change everything in college football. The entire
and rightfully so, Brian, not to cut you off, because even if, and I'm going to put it out there, and hopefully I don't tarnish my name, but I'm not worried about it. I want truth. If the SEC or any Power 5 school plays football this season, I would challenge them that they're not looking out for the welfare of those athletes that bring so much value to that school.
All right,
no response on
that
one.
That's a tough one, but I can't argue it. Put it like that. I can't argue it with you because I can't say there is not some truth in that.
I think I said this last week. There are no right decisions right here. There are only wrong decisions that you can make when it comes to this COVID-19.
AD, it's funny you said that, because
Go ahead.
I found myself saying that to somebody else the other day, and as I was saying it, I was like, God dog it, AD, you put that thought in my head, and you are 100% right with that. You are right with that. There really isn't.
Yeah.
But you have to look at the ramifications of the decisions, gentlemen. You're talking about people.
That's why I said there are only wrong decisions that can be made. Because there is no right. There's only wrong, and which wrong, to quote John Lewis, and kind of twist it to this. You know, John Lewis always used to say, "Let's go get into some good trouble." Well, let's get into the best of the bad right now. That's the only thing you can do with this COVID-19. What's the best situation out of this bad situation that we're in with COVID-19? And one thing I want to throw out here, Brian, you know, I want to echo what Trevor said. Kudos to the SWAC having a plan. Now, here's what I'm afraid of. When the SEC, ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12 duplicate the SWAC's plan.
You already know where the credit's going.
Everybody's gonna forget about the SWAC's plan.
No, I disagree. I don't think they're.
I won't. You won't. No. But that full letter network.
It's Heather.
They're going to focus
ESPN.
on.
It's already there. She works for ESPN. The story is already there. ESPN. It's in their hands.
And it will wind up on the undefeated, and it will be lost in the shuffle of the undefeated.
It's not on the undefeated. Drew, you're horrible. It's not on the undefeated. It's on the main page of the doggone.
Or the 4-letter network with the numeral behind it. One of those Power 5 conferences will get it because they will tweak one little thing out of that SWAC plan, because they won't have a 7-game season like the SWAC. They'll have an 8-game season, and that 8-game plan will be gospel, and it came from SWAC. Just like a lot of things that have happened in our society, we came up with it, and they took it and ran with it.
Not going to happen, Drew. I had to agree with Brian. It's not going to happen. Why?
I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't.
Because there are things in place amongst the black media now that will not let it happen.
I hope it doesn't.
There's so many people covering that we can make sure that the SWAC is not forgotten with their decision and that their leadership. So I have to agree with Brian on that one. It's not going to happen.
And another thing. I think Dr. McClellan is connected into the NCAA executive committee. I think in basketball, in essence, he has connections with other commissioners within the NCAA. I think that they respect his position and his decision making, and I think you will start to see credit from other leagues giving to him and the SWAC.
Brian,
go ahead.
I was going to
say if they actually decide to do something similar, I think those leagues and those commissioners, especially if it's the SEC, I think they will credit and reference the SWAC. But you think otherwise, though.
I really hope they do, and I'm just throwing it out there for discussion. I believe the SWAC deserves some credit. It deserves all the credit right now. But fellas, of the 5 HBCU conference commissioners that we have, is there anyone who's doing a better job, especially in the media, than Dr. Charles McClellan right now?
I think he's media savvy to the point of I think his timing is right now. I mean, there are a lot of things happening for the SWAC.
If you had a who's who, you know how the who's who 100 of this genre and that genre, media, sports, whatever. Dr. McClellan would be at the top of the list right now when it comes to the 5 HBCU commissioners right now.
Go ahead, Trevin. What were you going to add?
You know what, AD? That's nice. And I'll give Dr. McClellan his props. But what I would love to see is all the commissioners of all the HBCU conferences come together, and that all of them get that shine at the same time, and that all of them are working together and promoting Black college football, basketball, track, volleyball, all of that. I would love to see all of them come together, and not us or anybody else sitting back and saying, well, isn't that commissioner of that conference in HBCU sports, isn't he doing or she doing such a fine job? Isn't she just like he the top of it all? I want people to look at it and say, you know what? HBCUs and their sports and their commissioners got it going on as a whole. I don't like for us to be separated. I will give you credit and kudos where it's due, but my ultimate would be to see all of them come together, and then we sit here and say, excuse my language, damn, I can't separate them. They are just doing their thing as a whole.
But what I think Dr. McClellan is doing right now, because we all know what the SWAC was 3-4 years ago before he became a commissioner. He is raising the bar and raising the standard right now in HBCU sports, where it's going to force the other commissioners to raise their game and to get to the level, because the SWAC is hot right now. You don't want to be left behind. MEAC. You don't want to be left behind SIAC.
But
you don't want to be left behind CIAA, GCAC. And this is no disrespect to the other conferences, but McClellan is raising the bar for Black college sports right now. And the other commissioners, like you said, Trevor, need to come together so that they can raise that bar and get to that same level.
Yeah, but see, go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
Well, I think your yeah, but is different than my yeah, but. I honestly think my yeah, but is different than yours. My yeah, but
one T got two T's.
Look, my yeah, but was going to be more related to the fact that you've got three different levels. You have 5 conferences on 3 different levels, so that's the first thing. And I think what happens in Division II is a lot different than what happens in Division I. And then I also think within Division I, you literally have a change of power because of what's happening in one conference, and half of the departures from that conference are sliding over to the other conference. So, let's just go back and if you went back and did a case study and said back in 2010 when the MEAC was sitting on 11 teams and about to have a 12th, what was our thought of the MEAC then versus the SWAC back in 2010?
The MEAC was hot.
So
and that was. Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
No. I think you were gonna. Go ahead. Go ahead, Trevin.
That's where my yeah, but was coming from. Because if you go back in time and in history, each conference was hot at a certain period in time. Each conference has contributed to the growth of HBCU sports. So I don't want to go off on the deep end and say, oh, well, the SWAC is just tremendous right now. No, the SWAC is doing their thing, and they're actually getting more teams and some from the other conference. I agree with that. But you got to remember, and that's why I love being and I love to hear Doc speak too, because I'm learning that a lot of sports people are historians at the same time. So if you go back in history, you'll see, because remember, a lot of these teams came from the CIAA and the SIAC.
Yeah.
You understand? So those were the top conferences at one time. So as they evolved,
there was no MEAC at one point in time.
But the MEAC sprouted out of those conferences.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying.
Correct.
So now that's what I'm saying with you. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I want, instead of us saying, okay, so this conference is now going to pull this conference. No, I want all the commissioners to be together and be like, say, okay, we can grow. Because right now, brothers, and I'm going to tell you, my whole theme has been this, even in life. Unity right now is the key for survival. Unity is the key for survival. I don't care if you're the top conference or the bottom conference. Unity is the key for survival. And that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, good point. Trevin, good point indeed. I think what I was, the last little point that I think I was going to add on this, and it escapes me. I think it escapes me right at the moment. But let me forward to just pointing out that with the SWAC's decision, that leaves just one HBCU football team remaining in Division I. That's Tennessee State. They are part of the OVC.
So they will be the national champions by default for the fall semester?
Not happening.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, if we did a preseason rankings, which we don't do preseason rankings for the fall, I think Tennessee State would be preseason number 1.
I saw that tweet, by the way. You snuck that in. You guys tweeted that earlier.
We don't do preseason rankings though, so I mean, just to,
Brian, I got one phrase for you. Shift F8 next to that. Look at your keyboard, you'll see what I'm talking about.
I don't have an F8 button on this keyboard.
No, Shift 8. Shift 8. I'm sorry, Shift 8.
Oh hell, I don't know what is that supposed? Oh, I got you. The
asterisk.
Okay, I got you. So here's the roll call of the last few standing HBCU football teams: Tennessee State and FCS. Division II, we've got West Virginia State, who's part of the Mountain East Conference. Lincoln, Missouri, the Blue Bears of I think they are the MEAC in Division II. Now I believe I read, let me see, I retweeted their tweet. Their institutions announced a plan to delay the start of athletics. Practices will begin the week of August 31st. Competition will start the week of September 8th. I think they're trying to give themselves some more time to figure out what they want to do. So right now, Lincoln is still in the mix. Then we have some NAIA schools. We have Edward Waters College and Florida Memorial University. Although Edward Waters took a big hit with losing a lot of teams from their SIAC schedule, but we still haven't heard that they're suspending or canceling their fall sports. Florida Memorial is actually in a conference that is still planning on playing. So for them, their conference schedule, I think, is what they are relying on.
Which ironically is the conference that Edward Waters was in before they started playing the SIAC schedule.
And a lot of schools are in Florida too, so you can go figure that. So I mean, just take that for what it's worth. And then we have we've got Virginia University of Lynchburg, VUL. What did we find out? They don't have a schedule listed. Is that right, AD?
No, they did have a schedule listed.
Okay, they did have a schedule.
With the cancellation, I believe they had 7 games left because they had a couple of SWAC teams on their schedule for this year.
Okay.
But they have 7 games remaining on their schedule.
And Allen University, who we have not heard that Allen, they will be moving to Division II. I don't know if I don't recall if that's next year, or I don't think it's this academic year. I think it's next year. Somebody, if anyone knows.
I think what I saw was for next year as well.
Okay, but I have not heard or seen anything that Allen University canceled their season for this fall.
But they do not have a schedule online.
There's no schedule online. So that's the roll call of football teams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, possibly 7. Yeah, 6 and a possible. And then, of course, it should be noted that the GCAC is still planning to play fall sports as well in their conference. They do not have football, so we're talking primarily volleyball and I believe cross country, possibly soccer too. I think they do have soccer, but I'm not sure if that's a fall or a winter sport or not, or fall or a spring sport, to be honest with you.
Women's soccer is pretty much fall, and then men is like a winter spring sport.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. All right, so that's where we are at with the football roll call, and we'll just kind of wait to see where we go. All right, so look, this has been a good show. I appreciate you guys for coming in. I know it probably went a little bit longer than we planned, but that's how we do it on the SportsWrap.
A lot bit longer.
That's how
just a little breaking news. I had to jump off. I had a call to reach out to Charles, and he said he looked forward to coming on the show, and he said thanks for all the information that we're getting out on the SWAC and taking it seriously. So I did want to give that information for those early, and like I said, we'll have them on the show tomorrow, Tuesday, as our normal show day, in regards to from 5 o'clock Central Time instead of the normal 6 o'clock time, because we'll do a 2-hour broadcast and get in there. So you all follow us, get us in there, and we'll get some of the information. And make sure if y'all have some questions, let me know. I'll make sure they get asked for that. And we'll see about bringing y'all in on the second part of that as well.
I do have one question I want you to get off, Dr. McClellan, for me. They've got that one out of a conference game that they can play. I'm just throwing this out there. Or FAMU and Bethune possibly going to be that out of conference game. I'll let you phrase it how you want to tomorrow, but just throwing that out there.
I think that's a great question. I asked him, and I'm sure that he'll be prepared to look at that. I think obviously some of that's going to be depending on what the MEAC decides to do.
Right, assuming that MEAC would not allow it.
Yeah. But I would think that would be a viable option, and that's probably why they kind of put it out there for those type of matchups in the HBCU for big games. So I think that's a great question that needs to be asked, and I'll make sure I will.
Yeah, definitely. And it should be noted, of course, the MEAC SWAC challenge at the beginning of what would have been the beginning of the season canceled. The Celebration Bowl, the end of the season championship game canceled. And we'll see what happens. Although, it's funny.
Right. And I'll reach out to John Grant and see what his thoughts are, maybe moving the MEAC SWAC challenge.
I would just, I've been trying to look into this and just kind of see where bowls are, with everything going on. Are bowls even planning on having games? I'm sure they're as in the dark as everybody else.
At this point, I have not heard anything where it looks like bowl games will be canceled except for the Celebration Bowl. And so everybody else is planning to move forward based on until other information is heard. Because you got to think about it. At this time, the FBS, for the most part, whether it's Power 5 or the next group of 5, all of them are looking as if they're planning to play a season. So if they're planning to play a season, they plan to be bold. Remember, the NCAA did put out there that you could count FCS teams, count 2 games instead of the 1 game you normally count out, which gives you some indication about what's going on. And they said that would allow you to be bowl eligible. Mm-hmm. So that came out from the NCAA that they changed and ratified that rule. So FBS teams could play 2 FCS programs and get the credit to go to a bowl game in terms of the 6 games they had to be eligible for a bowl game. So they give you some more indication. At this point, bowls are moving forward.
All right. So again, Doc, we're going to get ready to wrap up. I'm going to give you an opportunity. Plug the show again, Tuesday night, tomorrow, July 21st. The show, it'll be a 2-hour show beginning 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central. Normally the show starts a little bit an hour later, but with special guest Dr. Charles McClellan, the commissioner of the SWAC, coming on the show. Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Doc, give them the plug, the Twitter and the Facebook plugs.
Thank you. Did a great job there. I appreciate all that love, Brian. Yes, check me out on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Dr. Keynatta Cavil. That's Dr. Keynatta Cavil. Again, that's Dr. Keynatta Cavil. Dr. Keynatta Cavil. Catch me on the website at thdagency.com. thdagency.com.
Very well. Appreciate that, Doc. Trevin Jones, urbanmediatoday.com. Trevin, give us a plug. Let us know what we can expect coming up on the next show. You got a lot of topics, I'm sure, over the course of the week. We'll see where it goes. But go ahead and give the people the plug.
Definitely. UrbanMediaToday.com is the place. Every Saturday morning, we have a radio station attached to the website 24/7. It's music driven. It's UrbanMediaToday.com. Just click at the top of the website with the headphones like that are behind me. Get you right in contact with the radio station. I say that to say this. The shows are on the website now, and they're always posted to the website. We have a Saturday morning where we have a podcast Saturday, and that's where our show airs, Saturday morning, 10:30. You can reach out to us at urbanmediatoday.com, or you can also go to the Gmail, urbanmediatodayradio.com, at gmail.com. Check me out at Trevin A. Ice Code Alpha on Twitter. Ice Code Alpha on Twitter. And I'm done.
You must have been one of the first people to get that. The fact that you got, what year did you sign up for Twitter? 2007?
Probably when Twitter was created to get
I know.
Alpha, but
The fact that you get that handle. Man, the fact that you got that handle, man. I don't know how you did that with all the brothers out there, man. I tell you, good job.
You got a good one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, indeed. AD, let them know where they can find you at, brother.
On Twitter at BCSN Drew. That's BCSN DREW. Got one quick question I want to get out to Dr. Cavil before I get my party shot in. Is Rob Calloway going to be back after your show tomorrow? Because he's got a good show also.
Yeah, I'm glad that you put that out there. Yes, he'll be back. He'll start at the end of our show, the last 15 minutes, as we do a little banter, going back and do an introduction to his show. But I talked to him Saturday. He will be back for the full hour. And I'm looking forward to the way that he brings the news. It's not quite like any other one out there.
Boy, you got that.
Yeah.
Right.
So the HBCU report will be out there banging with Rob Calloway. So I thank you for putting that out there. You can also catch us live for the second hour of the show when you're in Houston talking about the Case-Ways 1230 a.m. for those that are local in this area. You can catch us up live for that from 6 to 7 as we do the thing. But, yep, catch up Rob Calloway. We'll catch him on here about 7 o'clock. That's Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and catch him for the rest of that hour to get into the HBCU report.
Now I'll get my part shot. The one thing we did not discuss today that we will get off on our next show is, and actually this was supposed to be the title of this podcast, is What Now? What now for HBCU sports? That's why we all came here to talk about the what now. We got to talk about everything else but the what now. I hope we haven't ran Trevin away, because we never go on script, Trevin. If you watch the podcast, it looks scripted, but it's not. We just go with the flow. It's just go with the flow. But
what's now is that we can sneak it in here to make sure we got it in there. What's now we'll be talking about.
But
yeah, we'll be talking about winter sports here in a moment.
But the one thing I want to put out to everybody, and like I said, this will be next show, everybody needs to think about if football and volleyball happen in the fall, along with basketball, along with baseball, along with softball, along with soccer, men and women's, along with track and field, along with tennis, and golf. And I probably left something out of there, because you can cancel cross country, because cross country and track can't go on at the same time, because 9 out of 10 times they're the same athletes. But that's a lot going on for somebody's medical staff, sports information department, some athletes who play both sports, and some coaches who coach fall and spring sports. So. But we'll get into that next show. Just wanted to throw that out there as a carrot to dangle out. Make sure you tune into the next show as we try to figure out how the hell all this is going to happen in the springtime, if it's going to happen. I'm done, Brian.
Yeah, no, hey, that's a good lead, and it got me to thinking. My final thought has to do with pay attention to what state high school athletic associations are doing around the country. I know before we recorded this, I was watching the Florida High School Athletic Association have a meeting trying to figure out what they were going to do. And obviously that was about 2 or 3 hours into their meeting, and I just cut it off. I was like, I'll wait to get the report later. But I know there are states who are making some what we might consider unusual changes. California would be one state in general. Go look up their release of what they have planned for high school sports. There are states that are canceling fall sports in general, state of Virginia. And then Texas, what's going on in Texas? Did they cancel fall? Is that what I heard?
They hadn't made a final decision yet, but you have some districts, school districts in Texas. One of them, Houston ISD, that has pushed the season to start back, like they're pushing the school year. You have districts in terms of DISD where they're looking at pushing the season to the spring. And that's what's on the table for a lot of the UIL that governs all of them, to see at some point, is it best to push everything to the spring or in that avenue. similar to what you're seeing going on at the intercollegiate level. You see the same at the interscholastic level in terms of high school sports.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to follow that, and kind of, I'm just going to reiterate what Trevin brought up earlier about if we're really in this for the care and concern of student athletes, a lot of decisions should be easier, but right now a lot of decisions seem to be politicized, and there's a lot of debate back and forth about should you or shouldn't you, and I mean, I talk about young adults in college, but in high school, those are kids. Yeah, in high school, those are still kids because they still require somebody to sign their release forms in order to play high school sports. They still require an adult or guardian. So it is interesting to kind of watch and observe what happens across the various states in this country. Among our HBCU market, it seems like everything has settled now. We can sort of start looking forward and try to figure out what's next and how we move forward and start addressing or looking at what's going to happen with winter sports, and then paying attention to see what the spring sports do. So that'll be worth watching. A lot of great voices and a lot of shows. I know we've talked about not only Trevin's show, Doc's shows, Carlos Brown's show, HBCU Report, that show. I mean, a lot of great voices talking about Black college athletics right now. It's a great opportunity to get plugged in. And so whether you're following us on the Black College Sports Network or watching us on YouTube, we want to encourage you to be a part of that growing network. Make sure you like and subscribe and share. Recommend these different shows to your network of friends, because that is how we continue to grow in this space, so that when news is reported, you can actually see that these are people who are constantly covering Black college sports and athletics. And so you'll feel more comfortable, I guess, for some of you, with the sources and information as you become more accustomed to our voices and our shows. So that's my final thought. Just a reminder, mask up, be safe, be patient, be courteous, regardless of what someone else may do around you. Don't even get into words with them. Just do you and mask up. So that's all I got for Trevin Jones, UrbanMediaToday.com, Dr. Keynatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, and for my show partner, A.D. Drew, I am Bryan Fulford. Thank you for watching and listening to the BCSN Sports Wrap on the Black College Sports Network. Be safe and peace out.
I holla.